also suggest, and something I am really pushing, is this idea that we need to combine all of these groups. And by groups, I mean, imagine if the labor movement, the environmental movement, the anti-war movement, the fight, Stop Cop City movement, like all of these groups showed up for each other's actions. That's how we get a general strike. Because at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same oppressor. This is what people have to understand. Now, I get certain issues are more important to certain people because they are. I get that. But at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same oppressor. So it's this idea of creating the network so that at some point in my lifetime, we could see a general strike. We could see a situation where we've built up community networks so that we have support systems and safety nets in place for people to be able to not work and be able to strike. The only way we can build up these networks is to combine the movements. And that is very difficult to do because people are very stuck on their issues and their egos, and it's extremely frustrating. But that's the only way we're ever going to really get anywhere. That's just, that's what I'm trying to like facilitate in my life, that concept.
Yeah, we need a yellow vest movement in this country. I mean, yes. And when I look at France, I look at that as a model right there. I mean, they, pardon my language, they don't take any shit.
Here, hold on, look.
Oh my. Oh, you are awesome. we think alike.
Yes. Oh yeah, this is a gift. This was a gift from oh my God, Cantor was his. Is it Eric Cantor? I think his name. Friend of Steve Grumbine's. As you can see, I've got my Real Progressives logo on it. My Medicare for All Now. But yeah, I am ready for the yellow vests.
Yeah, I have argued for a yellow vest movement for I guess close to a decade when it started to take place in France, and just like we need that, and the way that they were striking last year was about a year ago when the Macron government unfortunately raised the retirement age from 62 to 64. Unfortunately, he succeeded in that, but I mean the French people went out in the streets and they're like they went out there and they made the government feel uncomfortable
because they have that social safety net where they can strike. We
Americans just roll over and play dead. I mean, my previous job was a union job. I was a 20-year member of the United Food Commercial Workers, and I hated contract time when they negotiated a new contract because I knew, oh my God, they're going to just take some more away from us, and they weren't going to go on strike. And I kept on hearing, oh my God, we're going to go on strike. I'm like, no, all of y'all from North Carolina, so am I. Y'all are not going to go on strike because y'all don't have it within y'all to do it. And I knew that they wouldn't do it, so they accepted whatever the company, what crumbs the company threw at them. So, I was grateful that it was a union job, and to not have a union job, to go from union to non-union is, even when it was a weak union, is as different as night and day.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the reality that people need to understand is even if you or your family or your people are not specifically in a union, the existence of unions raises up all labor. And that is a really important thing. And I emphasize that people in all areas should need to show up for labor, even if you're not in a sector or in an arena where you have a union option. Because that's just the only way this is going to work is if all the movements show up for each other. That's just the way it's got to be. And how long it takes us to get it together to do that. It's like a race to the clock to see what happens. Well, I mean, Florida will be underwater, but the rest of you might have a chance.
The thing about it is, I remember a decade ago, more than a decade ago, when Obama was running, they were talking about the Employee Free Choice Act, the card check. And they were campaigning hard on that. And I was very encouraged to hear them talk about that, because even though it didn't get rid of right to work, it would have undermined right to work, which is, I could accept undermining right to work, even if we weren't able to get rid of right to work. But as soon as
See, we're
Obama,
accepting crumbs. Why are you accepting crumbs? We need the PRO Act passed. We need end right to work.
well, I agree with you there, but I'm just saying that it would have made it easier for unions to organize. It would have actually increased the size of unions the way that the law was, that legislation would have been structured. And so unions would have obviously started growing under the Employee Free Choice Act. And so as soon as he got sworn in, he no longer talked about it, and nobody in Congress were really advocating for it anymore.
No.
And that was very frustrating. Is my point.
Yeah. Well, that's how it always is. You offer us crumbs and then we don't even get that. I mean, Biden couldn't even get a $15 minimum wage passed because the parliamentarians said so.
No public
these
policy.
are not serious people. You know what I mean? These are not serious people. They're not honest actors. These are not people that are actually trying to do things to help people. So it isn't that they can't do it. They don't want to do it. And that's what is a key thing for people to understand. They don't want to do that because that would make it more expensive for their rich oligarchic friends to exploit their workers. See, that would be the problem. They don't want that. And that's really what it is. So, just people need to be aware.
Yeah, and what drives me crazy is I'm a socialist, and it makes me mad when the right wing calls people who are basically 1985 Ronald Reagan Republicans who are registered Democrats socialists. I'm like, it drives me nuts.
I know. I always hear people on the right saying that the Democratic Party is full of like leftist socialists. And I'm looking at people like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. I'm like, I don't know who you are talking about. Like, it's so delusional how far the Overton window has moved to the right that people actually think that somehow Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden are leftists, let alone socialists. Like, how absurd.
Well, I think that the only person today that they kind of stopped calling socialists were the Clintons. They used to say that Clintons were socialists through the 1990s. I think that by the time Bernie Sanders came along, they were like, well, maybe Bill and Hillary Clinton are not socialists after all.
GOP are still I'm telling you, there are people like, if you were to sit and watch Fox News, which I don't recommend anybody do that, and you do that, you honestly believe that the Democratic Party has been hijacked by crazy leftists. And it's so ridiculous to me.
I've heard it all. Listen, I've listened to talk radio. I'm in the car a lot. So over the years, I have listened to enough of their talking points to know exactly what they say. And everything is so predictable. And the media is so right wing. There's no liberal media. There's no progressive media. You have centrists called CNN and the mainstream news network, and then you have the right wing media like Fox News and all of that, and talk radio. They're just off their kilter. They're just Looney Tunes. I mean, they're so Looney Tunes that the late Rush Limbaugh is basically equivalent to the Young Turks compared to the rest of the right-wing media. I'm not even a fan of the Young Turks, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. That's how.
No, I'm a fan of the actual Turks. I've actually met a whole bunch of Turks during Ramadan this year, and it was pretty funny. So sitting at a table with the real Turks, and I'm like, not to be confused with and I don't have a problem with the Young Turks, but I definitely like the real Turks.
Actually, I remember there was a Turkish family I spent New Year's Eve with in 2002. You had to take your shoes off in the house and everything, and watched a lot of television from Turkey, a lot of television from Syria and Iran. It was actually pretty interesting. So
yeah, I've learned a lot this month, like a lot. I've learned more about like Muslim culture, more than probably my whole life combined, just from the amount of iftar dinners I've been to and the amount of people in the community that I've met, and so many different ethnicities. So it's been so interesting, and I feel very like privileged.